Hello class, I have a couple of things I want to talk to you about today. The first of which is the process for writing a research paper, which we are going to be doing in class. And then after I talk to you about the process, I want to talk to you a little bit about why we even write research papers in school. But first we're going to go over the process, which you have probably heard before. However, this might be a little bit different than what you've seen. There's not necessarily a right or wrong process. Different teachers may tell you something slightly different or very different. It really just kind of depends sometimes on the subject or the teacher. And then ultimately when you get in college, it just depends on what's best for you. This is the process that we're going to follow in my class. This is the process that I prefer to follow on a research paper. The first step is to choose your topic. In school, you may be told what you're going to research. You may have a specific topic picked out for you. You may get to pick from a list of options. In college, you probably will have free reign on what topic you choose within the scope of the class, within the discipline that you are studying. Once you choose your topic, though, you have to narrow your focus and come up with specific questions that you want to answer in your paper. These are called your research questions. When I say narrow your focus, when you chose your topic, you may have come up with something kind of broad. The example I have on the screen is music. You can't write a paper over music. You could write books over music. Think about all the things that you would have to talk about if you were just talking about music. Different types of instruments, different styles of music, music history, music theory, so much stuff. Okay, even narrowing it down to one genre of music, you still have how did that genre develop, who are the main artists, who are the main influences, how has it developed over time. You can't pick a broad topic and cover it fully in your paper. You need something very specific that you're going to talk about. In the example that I've given of music, narrowing it down to the genre of rap, you could write a paper over what musical genres influenced early rap. That is specific enough that you could actually cover it with sufficient detail in a single research paper. Another example would be American history. Okay, that's probably your class, so you pick a topic within American history that you want to study. Maybe you decide you want to do colonial time period. Well, that's still too broad. Maybe you want to talk about the Declaration of Independence. That is still too broad. You need to determine a specific question about the Declaration of Independence. Maybe you want to research what were Thomas Jefferson's influences when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. But your focus has to be a specific question that you are going to answer. Now, the next step is to locate credible sources. Now, the question here is, do you know what the word credible means and the word credibility? Okay, if you do not, pause this video and go look it up right now. Credible. Look it up in the dictionary, dictionary.com. What does credible mean? Credible means capable of being believed, believable, worthy of belief or confidence, trustworthy. Okay, so when we say a credible source, we mean a trustworthy source. Why are we concerned about trustworthy sources? Well, not all sources are trustworthy. You're going to find as we continue this research paper process, you can't just use any website as a source for a research paper. They're not all trustworthy. They're not all credible. So this is something that we will actually spend some time on later once we actually get to this point in the research process. But just know that not all sources are credible, and it's really important to know how to tell whether a source is credible or not, because you don't want to use something that's giving you false information. The next step is to prepare a source list. Okay, that might not seem like the logical next step, but it is. There is a specific way to put the information about your sources in order based on MLA formatting. Okay, in English class and literature class, MLA formatting is the formatting that you will use. This may be something you've done before, it may not be. What MLA calls works cited, you may have done in the past and called it a bibliography. So this is again something else that we will have to talk more about later. But the reason why I'm telling you to prepare a source list next, instead of taking notes or writing or whatever, is that you need to keep your information organized, because when you write a research paper, you have to give credit within the paper to the sources that you use. Okay? It's really important to keep all this information organized and to give credit to the proper sources, because if you don't, that's considered plagiarism, which is something else that we will talk more about more in depth later. So the next step is creating the source list so that you can keep organized as you continue. Step 5 of the research process is to take notes over the sources you have found. We will be using the note card method, which we will discuss later. Essentially, it's writing your notes on individual note cards. The important thing when taking notes is to only take notes on the most important information, the information you will actually use in your paper. Use your research question, your focus of the paper, to figure out what's important. If it doesn't pertain to your research questions, if it doesn't help you develop that topic, don't waste your time with it. Don't bother with it. Make sure that everything you take notes on is going to be relevant to the paper you are writing and the research questions you're trying to answer. It is also important to keep track of what information comes from what source. If you do not give credit to the correct source, you are stealing. Okay? What do I mean by that? I've already mentioned plagiarism. Okay? So let's look at the definition of plagiarism. Plagiarism is the act or instance of using or closely imitating the language and thoughts of another author without authorization, and the representation of that author's work as one's own by not crediting the original author. Look at the synonyms though. Counterfeiting, theft. Okay, plagiarism is considered stealing. Stealing someone's work, their thoughts. They put work into that source that you are using in your paper, so you have to give credit to it. We'll talk more about plagiarism later. It is a big deal. It is a big deal in high school. It's a big deal in college. So we have to learn how to not plagiarize. Okay? Don't get overwhelmed by that. I will teach you how to do that. But just know when you take your notes, you need to keep track of and notate on your note card what source you got those notes from. Okay? After you take your notes, you're going to write your controlling idea. Okay? So you have your focus, your research questions, and you're going to kind of use that along with the information you found to write what is essentially your thesis or your topic sentence. The reason we're calling it a controlling idea at this point in the process is because it could potentially change if you find more sources, or as you write, your focus changes. But generally this will later become your thesis statement or your topic sentence of the paper. To write your controlling idea, it's going to be in sentence form, and you need to use the wording from your research question. So that example I gave earlier in the presentation about music, and I narrowed my topic to rap, and then I had to come up with a specific question. If my question was what musical genres influenced early rap, then my controlling idea is going to need to use some of the information that I found from that research and actually answer that question. So my thesis statement for my paper would be blues and jazz are two of the most well-known musical genres to influence early rap. Okay, so you do have to do research first, because your thesis, your controlling idea, does need to have some detail. You wouldn't write a thesis that was very vague, and you're not going to say, I am going to tell you, or I am going to write about the musical genres that influenced early rap. You need to be able to state your claim or your focus in that thesis statement. After you've taken those notes, after you've written your controlling idea, so you kind of know where you're going with this paper, you're going to read all of your note cards again and group them together based on similarities. You're going to organize these groups into the order in which you will present the info in your paper. And then you're going to organize the information within each group and then type all that up as an outline. Okay, so you're using your note cards as manipulatives pretty much. You have the information written down and you're going to organize it. Now, hopefully, as you read through your note cards, the groups will kind of come together in your mind fairly easily. Hopefully, you already have in mind probably some of the things you need to talk about, some of the distinctions that need to be made, what each paragraph should be about. Here's my example outline, and you can see that I didn't include a whole lot here, so I wanted to show you a more detailed example. So this sample outline right here is about Frederick Douglass. He is a figure in American history, if you have not heard of him yet. And this outline, they actually wrote out their full thesis statement. Frederick Douglass played a crucial role in securing the abolition of slavery and equality of African American rights through his actions, ideas, and efforts as a lecturer, author, publisher, and politician. Okay, so let me go ahead and take the opportunity here to make the point that that is a really specific thesis statement, that they had to have done some research before they could write. Okay, they didn't just say Frederick Douglass played a crucial role in securing the abolition of slavery in many ways. Okay, they did some research first. They've done enough research that they wrote a really specific outline. Now notice that the pieces of this outline are not complete sentences. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for complete sentences. I'm not looking for this to be your entire paper just in bullet point form. You're just giving the highlights. Their second paragraph is going to be about him as a lecturer. Here are the things that he lectured about. Here are some highlights, some main points. Okay, but it's not in complete sentences. Okay, so this is kind of what we're looking at with a outline. After your outline, you will write your first draft. But guys, if you have an outline and you have note cards with all the information that you need for this paper in the right order, the first draft is not going to be hard. You've done a lot of the brunt work before you even get started typing. Another thing to remember, as with all writing, the first draft, otherwise known as the rough draft, does not have to be perfect. Okay? It's a lot easier to get your ideas and your writing down on paper and then make it better than to worry over your style or the words you use or anything like that first. Just get it written down and then you can work from there. However, there is something very important that you do need to have in the first draft. Other things don't have to be perfect, but you do have to have your in-text citations. Okay? Remember that plagiarism is stealing. Okay? We talked about that earlier. Stealing is going to be considered cheating. Okay? Most teachers are going to give you a 0 if you turn in a plagiarized paper. It is considered plagiarized if you don't have citations. Again, we will talk more about plagiarism later. It is a big deal for all teachers. It becomes an even bigger deal in college. You cannot do it. Okay? Now, just in case you have not heard the term in-text citations before. An in-text citation means that you are giving credit to the source within your paper. Okay? We know about bibliographies, we know about having a source list at the end of your paper, but you are going to actually put little citations in your paper that give credit in the paper. Okay? Now when I say citation, that is a word that has a lot of meanings in terms of research. We have right here the act of citing or quoting a reference. So we're quoting a reference and we are acknowledging that in our paper by putting in an in-text citation. Your in-text citations in MLA will be the author's last name with the page number that the information was found on. The next step is to revise and edit. Okay? Those two words are usually used together. They do mean different things. Revising is evaluating your content and organization. Okay, do you need to reorganize your information? Are your paragraphs in the best order? Are the sentences in the best order? Do you need more details? Do some of your details need to be cut out because they are irrelevant? Because there's no unity in your paper? So revising is looking at your content and organization. Editing is your grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Okay? All of these need to be considered after your rough draft. Then you write another draft after you're going to make those corrections that you found, or that your teacher found, or that your parent found. Anybody that you can have look at your paper is good. That's someone to catch things that need to be corrected. Make all the corrections you need. That'll be your second draft. And then you revise and edit again. Okay? Different teachers will do different amounts of drafts. And then when you're in college, it's left up to you. But as many times as you can revise and edit, your paper is going to be better. Continue writing drafts and revising and editing until you have a paper that is final draft worthy. Now that we've talked about the research paper process, I want to talk to you a little bit about why we write research papers in the first place and why you need to learn how to write one at this point. First of all, research papers are not strictly something that happens in school. People write research papers to further the study of a particular topic. For example, in science, a scientist might write a research paper after conducting experiments on the effects of feeding mice genetically engineered corn, or any other scientific experiment that might happen. The scientists are going to write about it. Someone studying the effects of feeding humans genetically engineered corn would most certainly be interested in the research paper on the mice. So scientists use research papers. They read research papers. It helps them further a topic of study by learning more about what has already been found in that particular realm of research, that particular topic or idea that they are researching. It's not even just science that research happens outside of school. Now, science would probably be the most obvious type of research that we know is happening, and new things are being found, and scientists need to know what is going on in their field and keep up to date. But even a subject like literature, you may have someone who's really well versed, like an English professor, and they're researching and writing about how Jonathan Swift was influenced by the political climate in England during the 1700s. This professor would read historical papers, political science papers, other literature papers along with Swift's writings to develop a point in which he or she would prove in the research paper. This paper would interest anyone studying Jonathan Swift. Okay, so we have professionals outside of school who are reading and conducting experiments and researching and learning and writing about what they learn. Another reason people write research papers is to help another person working in a field. Okay, so really, same examples. That scientists that conducted experiments, their research was hands-on, but they wrote about it so that other scientists and researchers could benefit from what they learned. Again, not just science. Teachers may read research papers to find the best way to do things. Okay, you have educators who are researchers who are conducting experiments to find out how students develop better listening skills or improve reading comprehension. And so teachers may be reading research papers to help them in their field. But at this point you may be thinking, that's great for adults, that's great for those particular fields of study, but I'm in school, I'm a student, so why do I have to do this? And after listening to and taking notes on the research paper process, you may be a little bit overwhelmed, or you may be a little bit confused. I don't know how much you've done with research in the past. I don't know how familiar you are with the terminology, like MLA, plagiarism, in-text citations. You may know what that means. You may be a little bit confused. Okay, so why do we do research papers in school? There are several reasons. One is to learn how to avoid plagiarism. And again, I know this is a term that I've used over and over again, and I have defined it for you. I still plan to talk about it more, but you can get in major trouble for plagiarism, especially in college. And the sooner you learn how to write without plagiarism, the better. Okay? So learning how to use sources in your writing, but just give credit to them. That's all you have to do to avoid plagiarism. So that's part of why you write research papers, is to learn how to give credit to our sources. Another reason is that you will learn a lot about the topic you research. Okay, you're spending time reading this information that other people have written, what they have discovered about a topic, and then you have to take that information and put it in your own words. You have to take information from multiple sources and integrate that information together into one composition into one cohesive paper that is in your own words. It's your own processing of that information. So research papers really improve your comprehension of a topic. You're really going to learn it, and you're less likely to forget what you've learned because you've read it, you've processed it, you've written it in your own words. So you've encountered the information over and over again. You're also going to improve your overall writing skills. Okay, writing skills are important. They are expected in college, and even in a lot of professions. You would be expected to be able to write emails, be able to communicate with people verbally or with writing. A lot of the tests that you might have to take for school, ACT tests to get into college, you may or may not have to do the writing portion, but there is a writing portion. If you get a degree where you have to go to graduate school, you will have to write for the entrance test, the GRE. If you go to medical school, you'll have to write. A lot of future professions require it. So research papers is a good start to improving your overall writing skills. You're also going to improve your critical thinking skills. You are reading something, processing it, understanding the information, and then you have to explain it in a new and interesting way. And it's not just that you're doing that with one source. You have multiple sources that you're reading, processing. You take pieces from one source, pieces from another source, put it in the best order. Okay, so it really takes a lot of critical thinking to write a research paper. And of course, critical thinking skills are skills that you'll use for the rest of your life. It may not be in the way that we use them for writing research papers. It may not be writing research papers, but critical thinking is something that you will always use. And then finally, learning how to write a research paper isn't easy, okay, but it is something that you will do throughout the rest of school. On into college, you will write research papers. It doesn't matter what you decide you're studying. There will be classes that require you to write research papers, and sometimes you would be surprised at the classes that do write research papers. Science classes are going to do research papers and lab reports. English classes, your Comp 1 and Comp 2 obviously are, but you might even write a paper in a math class. I mentioned earlier that if you become a doctor, if you go to med school, your classes will require that of you. If you want to be a lawyer, you're going to write a lot. I went to a Christian college and wrote papers for some of my Bible classes. And the thing is, you get to college and your professors are going to expect that you already know how to write a paper. They are not going to walk you through these steps. So even though it is or can be a tedious process to go over all of these steps and then go through these steps, to follow a prescribed way of doing things, it will be one less thing you have to worry about later if you learn how to do it now. As if all of that wasn't enough, if your classes are going to require you to do a research paper anyway, you're going to have to do it to get a good grade in the class. Okay? These are the 5 serious reasons why we write research papers, and I do want you to go ahead and pause the video and write these down somewhere in your notes. This is a good thing to know and to have to refer to. Why is it that we write research papers?